Hello, friends. Welcome back to this podcast and welcome, Jayanth. Uh, Hope you had a good weekend. And
Hi,
today
Leslie.
we are,
Yeah, what a week. What a weekend,
yeah, we're going to speak more about it. And we have a special guest
right?
with us today. So let me just introduce a guest to the speakers. Listeners, we have with us Debjani Ghosh, who for the last 4 years has been heading NASSCOM as its president. NASSCOM, as all of us know, is an industry body that has got IT services on the global map. But Debjani has many firsts to her credit. She was the first woman to head India's IT industry body, which has been actively working with companies to enable digital transformation in the country. Uh, and she is now at the forefront of pushing AI and generative AI initiatives. She was earlier also the first woman to lead Intel India and the MATE Manufacturers Association for Information Technology. In January 2018, she was felicitated by the President of India under the auspices of the First Ladies Program, which honors exceptional women pioneers in their respective fields. Debjani, welcome.
Thank
Privileged
you.
to have you on this chat. And we
Welcome,
hope.
Debjani.
Thank you. And I'm really now curious. I want to hear about your weekend, Jen.
Well, you know what? I was actually at an event. I was moderating. I was having a fireside chat with Chris Gopalakrishnan. Okay,
Oh,
it was Bangalore Literature Festival, and we were talking about his book, The History of IT in India,
yeah.
and our book, AI Rising India's Artificial Intelligence Growth Story, and we were talking about the next era of IT and tech in India. So I'm sure
Wow.
you'll be able to add a lot more.
Any conversation with Chris is tremendously profound. They
Yes.
sort of leave you with so much to think about.
Yes, we covered from everything from the history of IT to the future, including human consciousness and quantum physics and quantum computing and everything in between. So,
Lovely.
Yeah, and he's doing a lot of work in the area of brain computing and HCI and neuroscience.
correct.
I think he's
Pretty
doing,
interesting stuff.
when you talk about deep tech, I mean, the first name that comes to my mind, at least in India, is Chris. The kind of work he is doing to nurture the deep tech ecosystem, though, to really drive real deep tech innovation. Very few people, very few organizations in India that are actually that are actually focused on real deep tech. And I think Chris is one of those. I mean, he's the one of the key guys when it comes to fostering deep tech innovation in India.
Yeah, we'll come
Correct.
to deep tech
So
in a bit.
yeah,
I mean,
good weekend, profound conversations.
Yeah, but I think it's a very good start, for the conversation, setting the tone directly for this. And Dipjani, India today is obviously on the AI and now the generative AI map, the global map, if I were to say that. And a lot is happening. I mean, the two deals with RL and the Tata Group with NVIDIA itself has set the tone for, taking the extra leap. And NASSCOM has been doing tremendous amount of work in this space. Um, can you just give us a sort of a quick overview of your take on where India is as far as both the AI and now the generative AI kind of tsunami that's hitting us?
So first, Leslie, I will not agree that India is already on the map. I think we're just getting there. It's the first few steps, right? When you think about AI and you think about the AI value chain, right? There are four. I'm simplifying it tremendously, but in my mind, there are four pit stops, right? At the highest end of the value chain are the players who are controlling the cloud and the computing access for AI, which today is, for AI, you need three things. You need very high quality data, you need tremendous computing, you need talent, and I guess the fourth thing is you really need to make some big investments, right? I mean, if these four things come together, you are set, right? So at the highest end of the value chain are the players who have the cloud, who are the cloud providers, as well as computing providers, right? Then comes the companies that are building and providing the so-called foundation models, especially the large language models, which are driving a lot of the applications, right? Your OpenAIs and everyone. Then the third pit stop is what we call private LLMs, which is where companies will build vertical models for specific, like media companies like Bloomberg, etc., will have their GPT, or banks will have their GPT. These are vertical models which are built on top of either somebody else's or your own horizontal foundation model. And then the last leg of it is the companies that are building applications, right? ChatGPT is an application using GPT,
Correct.
which is OpenAI's foundation model, right? If you look at where India is today, most of our startups are at the application layer, where they are building wrappers or applications for video to text and all of that, conversational AI, etc. And they are leveraging the foundational models, etc., that is being built by other companies. Now, if you look at who controls the AI value chain, there are around 5 or 6 companies that are playing from top to bottom. They have cloud, they have computing, they have foundation models, they're building the vertical models and applications. And all these companies are today US, American companies, they're US-based companies, right? And if generative AI itself is like a 183 billion potential by 2030 or 2031, bulk of this is going to the folks who will control the entire value chain, right?
Right.
As NASSCOM, our goal and focus is just one thing. How do you move India up the value chain?
Right.
How do you ensure we can move as much as possible up the value chain? And it's not just about the revenue, but moving up the value chain also gives you higher influence on how some of these roadmaps are getting shaped, right? So computing was the starting point, that we had to get computing in India. So Jensen coming down, meeting with the Prime Minister, and then within a week getting the Reliance and the Tata deals and Infosys was just a dream come true. I think most people don't realize how historic last week was. This is what
exactly.
will propel India's movement up the value chain. Data we have, but tremendously fragmented and low quality. So we have tremendous amount of work to be done to ensure we provide high quality data. Talent we have to continue to build. Investments, we are nowhere near what the world is investing in AI. And this is where, again, we have to think through. So that's sort of the playbook and what we are trying to do.
You mentioned one of the 4 pillars to be talent. 3 weeks back, I was in Geneva and I was, speaking to some of the folks from UN, and we were looking at doing something at the intersection of mental health and AI. And then, we were also speaking to some folks in Boston and the Silicon Valley. One thing that came across, and this I'm hearing from the Europeans and Americans, is that both in Europe and in the States, any data scientist or an AI engineer, anyone working in the AI space, if the name is Indian, the resume is going on top of the pile, right? And this I'm hearing from the Western world, from the developed world. I mean, they're acknowledging it, okay? Over the weekend, the conversation that I had was also that the Indian IT sector employs over 5 million people. And Chris is a huge advocate of the talent that we have in the Indian IT and the tech sector. Specific to AI, how do you think India ranks in terms of talent? I mean, I'm hearing globally that we are the guys to watch out for, and we are preferred. What's your take on India's talent pool?
It's a very interesting data point, right? I'm sure you've heard of the Tortoise AI Index. They come out with it globally. It's one of the most comprehensive AI indexes that really measure countries. They call it the race to AI control. So they measure countries on where you are on the race to AI control and why. I'm in love with that,
right?
Because it allows you to play with so much data. So there are 4 things they broadly look at. They look at R&D, they look at investments, they look at infrastructure like compute infrastructure, data availability, etc., and they look at talent. right? Now, when you look at India, on R&D, on infrastructure, and on investments, we are very, very low in that list, right? So when I was looking, they had recently come out with the 2023 ranking, and I was shocked to find, I was literally shocked to find India break in within the top 15. And I was like, what changed? How did this happen?
Right.
So we sort of broke into the top 15. And
Right.
when you look at the data, it is because of talent, because on talent for the last 2 years, India has been in the second position.
Right.
And that is, I think, our biggest competitive advantage. When you talk about AI, our biggest competitive advantage is talent. But again, there's no time for being complacent, right? I mean, the skill requirements are changing so fast. I think we have to, one, we have to continue to reskill. And two, I think given our young population, we actually, there's a very unique opportunity ahead of us. And I sort of call this generation AI, because when you look at India, you say young demographics, right? What if the young demographics, that entire young demographics, not just the 5 million IT work employees, but that entire young population could be turned into AI users? For example, you think of a pyramid approach, I call it the skills pyramid. On top, the world needs 1 million world-class AI professionals, your data scientists, etc., etc. No reason why we can't provide that. Absolutely no reason, right? Then it gets interesting. Then you think of the second layer. India roughly has around 18 million or 15 or 18 million white collar workers, if I'm not wrong. What if we took that entire layer and we transform them into AI, or those, if you say with generative AI, you get that 30x productivity boost. What if each one of them was skilled to provide that 30x productivity boost in whatever it is they were doing? I mean, imagine what the difference it can make. And then you have this entire bottom layer of, what we call digitally literate citizens. What if you converted that entire layer into AI literate citizens, so people can, people won't hesitate to use a GPT, whatever it is, Kisan GPT, Tax GPT, whatever. And at the same time, know how to use it responsibly. So I think India has tremendous opportunity to really be the AI talent hub, not just for development and coding, but to provide the productivity boost, which is the biggest promise of AI and generative AI.
But Debjani, over here, this is a dilemma that I think a lot of youngsters are facing. I mean, because when I have these chats with young people, I realize that whenever we talk about reskilling, they ask, what do I reskill for? Because AI is also automating a lot of code. AI is writing AI code. There's so much, and we really do not know, like for instance, I was giving an example of prompt engineering. Now, everybody said that prompt engineering is going to be a six-figure salary job. So everybody jumped onto the bandwagon, and now suddenly you already have automatic prompt engineers. Now that's going to be a pretty tough kind of proposition.
It is. And Leslie, unfortunately, I don't think anyone knows the answers to what is that magic mantra for reskilling. The thing that I talk about is, one, you have to first know the foundation. I think why has India done so well? It's because of our education system and because of the strong foundation in maths, science that it builds. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we are doing so well globally. Let's not forget that. And I think investing in foundation, if the only thing I would add for the AI era is statistics, I think it's it's a key component of AI, and India is not very strong in when it comes to statistics. So that's one area we have to invest in. And then beyond that, it's about investing in learnability. It's about investing in how to learn quickly, how to unlearn quickly, how to communicate well, how to, these earlier
All the soft skills.
used to call
Yeah.
them soft skills, but Jayanth, I
Soft skills.
honestly don't think we are doing a major disservice by calling them soft skills. I think
I
right
agree.
now they are absolutely the core professional skills needed for
I
employability.
totally agree. I
Right?
totally agree.
And our
Yeah.
engineers have to learn how to speak and how to speak well, how to be great. The one of the I was speaking to someone who's a data scientist, a very well-known data scientist in US, and he was telling me that today, when I hire, the most important skill in data scientists I look for is storytelling.
Storytelling, yes.
So it's sort of, there's a major disruption happening, but I think important to build the foundation, important to build not just foundation in math, science, I would say statistics, I would add that, important to build your foundation of artificial intelligence. It is important to learn how to code still, because we are not giving away coding to the machines. Machines are helping us becoming more effective coders.
True.
It's adding a 30% boost to coding, and GitHub has done this amazing study. You guys should look at it when you can. But they basically looked at, and they said that there's roughly around 45 million coders in 2030, or there will be 45 million coders. With a 30% boost, you're going to get an additional 15 million effective coders. What does that 30% boost result in? And that can be estimated to deliver around a 1.5 trillion boost to GDP. So it's just amazing how it plays out. But I think I don't think the human angle will go away in coding. I think machine assisted coding. So
no, I think it's a very valid point, Debjani, because I don't think coding is going anywhere for the simple reason there's a lot of hallucination that is happening. And when AI is writing AI, for instance, you're going to get into a lot of copyright problems, trademark problems, plagiarizing of the codes and all that. So you will have to have the humans in the loop.
But the humans will have to know how to use the tools.
Know how to use it. Yeah, absolutely.
That is important.
Absolutely.
If there are like 10 to 15 productivity tools today that every graduate should absolutely master, right? And that's what's going to become important.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. But let me just come back to what we started with, on the computing part of it. We are talking about the computing power. We are talking about the RL and Tata Group deals. Now, the interesting part is a lot of NVIDIA is going to bring in a lot of GPU kind of stuff, and you're going to have the entire computing force behind thing. And they have also spoken about creating these LLMs in India. Now, I thought that was a pretty interesting thing, because we have Indian Institute of Science already working on Indian languages, which is a very important part of it. I remember during the Mint Digital Innovation Summit that we had on June 9, I wish you were there, you couldn't make it. So Rajiv Chandrasekhar was there as a special guest. And when I was having a chat with him, I had specifically asked him about the India GPT, because there was a lot of talk around it after Ashwini Vaishnav spoke about it. Now, Rajiv made a very interesting comment saying that I'm going to give full access, the government is going to give full access to all the Indian researchers, academics, and Indian companies to curated data sets that are there, and they have to create the LLMs around it. Government is not going to be involved in that. And then the NVIDIA deal talks about, creating these LLMs with RL. I would love your thoughts on, the local language part of it, because I think NASSCOM is also stressing a lot on the local. And I think that's a very integral part of, having it in your own language. Not only Bhashni, I think it's Indian Institute of Science is working with it. And there are Nandan Nilekani's project, AI for Bharat, is working on it, and many other such projects. But Debjani, your thoughts, please?
See, foundation models, and LLMs are a type of foundational models that use text, right?
Yeah, they're the language part of it.
Yeah. So, but foundation models, because they do so much more than just text. If foundation models are going to drive how AI gets used and what it gets used for, I think India does not have an option but to participate in shaping, the roadmap for foundation models. Otherwise, this has a bigger risk than what. It's not just about competition, or it's not just about boasting power as to who has the LLMs. What we risk if we don't, we risk losing our culture, we risk losing our languages. If tomorrow's future is about foundation models pretty much driving everything from healthcare to education to whatever have you, and we are not building the Indian context into it, there's a huge risk. And the risks today are more about countries thinking through this. Why is sovereignty such an important debate? And Jensen talked about it when he was here. But why is sovereign AI such an important discussion and debate to have? It's not just about the revenue and the value, right? But it is also about ensuring that as a country, you are protecting and preserving and growing your cultural heritage, your languages, your beliefs and your value systems by building foundation models that will have that context built into it. So I don't think it should be a debate whether we build or not. I completely agree with Minister Chandrasekhar that government's job is to provide the data sets because they have tremendously good data sets. Government's job is to provide the data sets.
Correct.
Industry, academia needs to build the models. And which is what I feel very encouraged, because both Reliance and Tata are talking about it, right? So, and that's the right way to do it. They need to build the models, but you don't need a lot of models, because models are also perishable. And models take a lot of investment. Let's not forget that. In order to be effective, a model has billions and billions of parameters and data. GPT 3.5 was trained on 500,000 trillion words, right? So it's just crazy how much of data and goes in, and how many parameters are going into it, which costs a lot of money. And the risk is, if Leslie, you are building an LLM, I'm building one, Jan's building one, you build yours first, but I figure out a way to do better with respect to higher parameters and data, my LLM is very soon gonna become the key one and yours is gonna perish, right? So LLMs are very perishable items, and that's something we have to factor in. So I think we have to be strategic here, and we need to figure out how do we get one or two horizontal models that sort of takes in all our languages, culture, etc. And then I think the right investment is smaller vertical models, like the DPI approach. Like each DPI solves one problem, right? So how do we build a model for diabetes? How do you build a model for tuberculosis or TB? Or how do you build a model? There's so many different problems to solve, right? For education, etc. So I think we have to see the strategy evolve. We should not have too many companies building horizontal models. It's not a effective business model. We should have one or two horizontal models that we can all leverage. And then the value is building those vertical models on top of it to really drive the business proposition or value.
No, I'm saying because it's an expensive proposition anyway, so I don't think any. It's basically, I think the 2-3 conglomerates that will get into it. Yeah. The others may not even be able to afford it, because I think each GPU. I was looking at the pricing.
It's not about competitive advantage. You shouldn't. As long as somebody builds it out and allows everyone to participate, companies then should focus on building their vertical models, which will drive their business.
And also building LLMs is also an extremely competitive space, right? I mean, only in the 1 week, the last week of August and the first week of September, 2 weeks back, in the open source space, 4,000 LLMs have been released out in the open,
Forget
right? Now,
4,000. I mean, the one that completely blew my mind was Falcon coming out with a
Falcon.
Exactly.
180 billion
180 billion.
parameters open
billion
source
parameters,
model.
180 billion.
I mean, how insane can things get?
True,
This is
true.
just
That's bigger than GPT-3, actually.
it's way
Yeah,
bigger,
yeah.
right? So this
No,
is
no,
just,
it's
this
175,
is
180
going
billion.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
good. It's great fun. It's great fun. But I honestly think,
Correct.
long
So-
term, we have to invest in research to figure out how to get that high level of accuracy without building out so many parameters and without using so much data. Because the other problem is all these companies that are building these crazy monster LLMs are completely disrupting or going back on their sustainability goals because of the amount of energy and water, etc., that is required to train these models. So there is a price to pay. It's not just the cost, but there is a price to pay. If we want to achieve our net zero goals, this is not helping us. So I think what the world really now needs and the industry really now needs, and the good thing is it's an engineering problem. So when it's an engineering problem, usually you can find a way to solve it. I think we have to figure out, the key thing we have to figure out is more energy efficient LLMs. I think that's the key requirement, even if it means we have to compromise a bit more on accuracy. And maybe that will mean that the human aspect cannot go away. The humans have to be there to ensure that
hybrid models.
It's accurate. Yeah. So this is what needs to be thought through.
No, but I'm glad you brought up
In fact,
that issue of Falcon 180B, because a lot of open source LLMs have come up before, Llama 2 being one of them. So, and these are fewer parameters. Like Llama 2 has anywhere between 7 billion parameters to 70 billion parameters. I think the sweet spot is around 15 billion parameters where you can create these kind of vertical LLMs. So there is a lot of stuff happening in that space. And I think that even that point of making them sustainable, making them, trying to reach our net zero goals are equally important. In fact, the interesting part is even yesterday, I was listening to Apple's conference live. So they have created this A17 Pro GPU chip. But I think they dedicated about almost 15 minutes or more than that, in fact, on sustainability. And so that was, I think everybody today is...
all the
really,
tech companies are worried. If you saw Microsoft's report and quite a few others, their water consumption has gone up significantly because of the investments in LLM, etc. So every tech company today is worried about it. And I think this is, if you really want to throw big research dollars, this is what we have to figure out, is what is the way forward? How do you build more energy efficient LLMs? That's the key challenge that faces us.
In fact, in the first episode of our podcast, we did talk about generative AI's impact on climate change. And just yesterday, I was reading an article. I can't pronounce the name very right. This region in China, Nanjing, which is actually becoming the compute power, hub for all the companies to put their data centers, which are working in cutting edge AI research. Only now compute power hubs are coming up in mountainous regions, which can provide natural cooling. So, India with Himalayas and all the North Indian, our northscape, we should actually look at that as a, geostrategic advantage.
Speaking about China, the interesting part is China has about 72 LLMs.
Yeah, they do. They've been at it for a while, because ever since I think Google came out with the transformer paper, rather the attention paper. I think China has been at it for, they saw this opportunity quite early, and they have been building. And it'll be interesting to see with the US saying that NVIDIA has to sell chips that are, I think, 20 or 30% that
import restrictions.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It might just force them to accelerate uh, their 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 plan to start building chips themselves, GPUs themselves. We'll have
I
to
think
see
they
how
may
that.
have to. No, it's a very valid point because TSMC also has opened up another center in Arizona now to cater to Apple chips and NVIDIA and all that. So that's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
interesting thing.
You know,
Yeah,
these,
yeah.
I mean, when we talk about AI, these imports and especially US deciding who sells to who, etc., is going to be a very important thing to watch because this will also determine who plays where in the value chain.
Yeah, talking about value chain, Debjani, you talked about India investing in building LLMs, to infuse our values and principles and the Indianness. Okay, and you also talked about investing in research. On the complete other end of the value chain are the AI apps. Okay, now my question is, are we entering that era where 20 years ago, when internet was just coming out of the woods and hit the inflection point, building apps, websites on the internet was a big thing. 10 years ago it was the mobile apps, right? I mean, all the tech startups and the VC dollars and the investments went into building mobile apps. Fast forward 10 years in the 2020s, over the next few years, are we seeing that kind of growth in building AI apps? Is building AI apps going to be the next big industry?
See, there's tremendous potential in building generative AI apps, but you have
Right.
to build apps that are sticky, apps that will provide higher value. Currently, my worry is we are literally building wrappers. Most of our startups, there are roughly around
Right.
70 to 80 startups that are working in this space, and most of them are building wrappers. Wrappers don't have stickiness. Somebody else will come out with a better
True.
wrapper and you're gone, right? And why are they doing it? It's not because of capabilities. And I personally know a lot of these founders who are playing in the generative AI space. They're brilliant guys and girls. They really are very good. But why are they doing it? Because nobody is willing to invest in them. In just FYI,
Right.
an early stage generative AI startup in India gets around 15 million funding. And by the way, out of the 70, hardly 10 have received funding. Okay. But in US, an early stage, same level generative AI startup will get her anything between 50 to 70 million. Right? So there's a huge gap. Now, what can you do in 15 million? Given that today we don't have computing in-house, one, you're going to spend most of that trying to get computing, and that's going to give you very little, frankly. There's no way, forget about building LLMs, there's no way you can even build those vertical models that is needed to give you that stickiness and higher value add on top of which you build your application levels, right? So yes, we will definitely see a lot of companies coming in and building applications because capabilities are there, problems are there to be solved. But for sustainable growth, I think we really have to look at our deep tech investment strategy in India. It is, I'm trying to figure out how to be politically correct and say the right word, but well, it is disappointing to say the least. It is really, really, really disappointing, and as a nation, we have to figure that out, because if we do not invest in deep tech, it's a tremendous concern. And this is the one thing that keeps me awake. I mean, this is just a tremendous worry.
I could sense the angst. I mean, anybody can sense the angst that you have come up with because of this thing. And
we have fantastic ideas, and
yeah,
they
but
will
this
not
is
get the money in India. They will get the
no,
money
but
if they go to US.
correct. But that is what I'm asked. So that is what I was coming to. So is it that the hesitancy from the point of view of angel investors, not so much angels, but more the VCs, to invest in deep tech is because they are not clear about where the entire industry is moving, because it's accelerating at such a rapid pace. Like today you have an LLM, tomorrow you have something else. So you just have to look at the Gartner hype cycle, and you realize the amount of changes that have taken place over a period of time. So is it the reason that probably they're not confident about the India landscape, that India can pull it off?
I don't think it's about India. I think it's just about see, deep tech investment needs patient capital. You can't invest one time and go away. Deep tech startups have a completely different life cycle compared to even a tech startup, right? You need the big investments up front, and then you need continuous investment and you have to do many iterations of product market fit before you finally crack it, right? Patient capital itself in India is a problem. It's we don't believe in patient capital. We want to invest and we want to get our returns. We want to get our returns very quickly, right? And it is slowly changing. People like Chris Gopalakrishnan are changing it. Some of the accelerators like IIT Madras, what Professor Jhunjhunwala is doing. There are a few people. There are very few, but there are a few good people, few good accelerators, but they are changing it. But collectively, it's still very few. And therefore, the total amount that's going into deep tech is still very low, right? And you have so many of these, what are they called? These things, these challenges and whatever they are, the hackathons where you're giving like 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, and you are saying AI startup, shuru kar do. I think we need to really sit down all these people and help them understand that it doesn't work that way.
I'm glad you're blunt about these things.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Get me
and in fact, one of the issues with the tech startup funding and the fund outflow is also that about 5 years back, I think it was Chamak Pahalipitiya in one of his talks at Stanford, he estimated that out of every one VC dollar that's invested in a consumer internet company, 45 cents go back to Google and Facebook in terms of ads, right? I mean, these consumer internet companies. Okay. And this was even before cloud. And for the last 3 years, since COVID years, me and Leslie have been talking. Then the founders have to factor in cloud costs, and now the compute cost if it's a deep tech AI company, right? Then our estimate is for every one VC dollar that's invested, almost 75 to 80 cents is going back to the big tech companies in between advertising dollars, cloud and computing. Even if the VC money comes in, the entrepreneurs, if they don't, budget and factor in their costs properly, they're left with 15-20% of the money raised to actually build out what they want to do and how they want to do it. Okay, so somewhere this equation also needs to change.
So Jayanth, I don't think that equation will change much, because I talked about the value chain. Now, those who were early movers, who were invested in infrastructure, they are going to benefit from it. And that's how it works. They were the first movers. They invested in building out the infrastructure, right? And it's how it will work, right? It's how the business model will shape up. But and computing costs, I think, will continue to go up, frankly, at least in the near term. They're not going to come down, especially with the shortage. With the GPU shortage that is already on us, everybody's facing it. GPU costs are going to go up, and it's going to be difficult to get GPU. So I think those challenges will stay, right? And therefore, having a 15 million check leaves you with peanuts to go and get the talent that you need, to go and do the research that you need, and all of that. This is why the average ticket size for our AI startups has to go up. Because you can't fix the other problem. You can't fix the business model. You have to factor in the business model. And this is why startups need a bigger ticket size. So after they have factored in their computing costs and their cloud costs, etc., they still have decent amount of money left to go and get good talent, to invest in whatever research they need to do, to invest in the development, right? Which is what our startups are struggling to do today.
That's why I think in this particular context, I find it very interesting that, companies like NVIDIA and all, they have their own accelerator. They help with all the technology and all.
NVIDIA does
I
a
think
fabulous job, by the way.
they have that inception program of theirs.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty good. And I was looking at some of the startups that are doing work in AI in India itself. I was surprised. I mean, because they require that kind of computing power and they won't get it unless they do it. In fact, actually, drawing a parallel between what's happening in the AI space is the quantum computing space, where IBM is using the Qiskit program, for instance. Now, that I think is a good model to probably, replicate in India. Because, the question that I again, obviously, I know I was surprised at the kind of plain speaking that you have been doing, and it gladdens my heart. I mean, from an industry body point of view, I mean, it's important that we have some plain speaking out here. So I'm going to ask you this question, which I earlier thought I wouldn't, but it's like India now, for instance, has been making has been trying to make semiconductors for the last 2 decades. We all have been part of that entire process, so we know it. There's a clear intent this time around, it looks like. But except that, again, I feel that again it's going to get into the 30, 40 nanometer space, what according to what Mr. Minister Chandrasekhar has said. It's not going to really help in as far as the GPUs are concerned. It's not even going to remotely touch those spaces. What's your perspective on how that's going to play out? Because we have got an amazing semiconductor design ecosystem, which we have been talking about, the ADSM space.
Right.
But how does it work out for, I mean, for the play for the entire AI ecosystem?
See, the semiconductor mission and what they are trying to do has its own market. Right, it's its own market, and they'll cater to the market. I don't think the semiconductor mission, the way, at least I could be wrong, but the way it was, the intent at that point wasn't to get into GPU computing, etc., which is completely
no, it wasn't.
And I'm not sure it's the right bet right now for even from an India perspective. I mean, the right bet is what's happening, which is the big industry signing up with the companies like NVIDIA and whoever comes up tomorrow to acquire the GPU, the computing power for India, and then build out their GPU clouds or data centers or hybrids or whatever have you to provide access to that, right? So I think they're two separate things in my mind, because right now, even NVIDIA's competitors haven't figured out how to build GPUs that well. I mean, they are building GPUs, but there's a huge gap in performance between what NVIDIA is delivering and anyone else is delivering, right? So this is a super complicated space. Maybe down the line, sometime in the future, maybe, of course, I hope we will have Indian, GPUs being manufactured in India at some point in time. But I think right now the priority is providing that access for me. It's not about making it here, but it's about getting that access and ensuring that our ecosystem has access to GPUs at a reasonable price.
I think you made a very interesting statement, because I'm going to, sort of elaborate on this concept, and I would love your thoughts here. Look at NVIDIA itself. Why go far? NVIDIA is a fabulous company. It does not manufacture, which I think time and again I keep on correcting people, it does not make its own chips. TSMC makes it, Samsung makes it. NVIDIA does not. India could probably become the fabulous, country. And there's absolutely no problem in being a fabulous country. So I think this whole race to get into the semiconductor space, probably
in today's world, if you want to catch up by following on footsteps and following that sequential plan, you're never going to catch up, because the leader will keep moving ahead. This is such a fast evolving industry. So in today's world, to catch up, you have to do something disruptive and something really big. That's really big, right? So this is where I keep telling Nandan, for me, the entire, whatever happened with DPI, I mean, it's fabulous, the infrastructure,
amazing,
and everything. But for me, the key thing that DPI stands for is the confidence that India can completely disrupt. We can completely disrupt, and rather than following the approach of building big companies that would build this end-to-end platforms, We completely disrupted the process and said, oh, guess what? We are going to create big ecosystems connected with by open and interoperable protocols, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, how fabulous is that? So it's that whole concept and mindset. And I keep saying we have to bring that mindset to AI now.
Absolutely.
We have to think about how to disrupt that value chain I talked about. If we try to climb that value chain one step at a time by doing everything that everyone else has done, it's not going to happen. We have to come in and think about how do we really disrupt that value chain. Like everybody is racing to build big, crazy monster LLMs. Can we, and this is where India again lags, right? We don't invest enough in research. So I'm really hoping the NRF framework initiative will change some of that. But I keep urging government that if you want to make a big investment, invest in figuring out how to disrupt that model and how to completely reimagine how to build LLMs that I don't know if it can even be done, but the engineers have to think through it. But one is energy efficiency. Two is in current LLMs, it's the companies that own the data, right? In DPIs, it's the ecosystem. The data belongs to the ecosystem. So some of these learnings, again, this is the good thing is these are all engineering problems. So if we, figure out enough and spend enough time trying debating this, I'm sure we have brilliant engineers who can crack it. But I think we need to disrupt the LLM business model. I think it'll be difficult to disrupt the cloud and compute model right now, but at least the LLM or the foundation model business model is something we should at least take a shot at thinking about how can we disrupt it.
Yeah, the world is looking at UPI. The world is looking at a backend protocol. I mean,
absolutely,
everybody is talking about it. So it's and a backend protocol is. I was speaking to Sujit John and to the thing. Even and Nandan. It was amazing. I mean, the kind of work that they have done in that space.
It is fabulous, and I believe that they're just getting started.
They're
The
just
potential is so huge there. The potential is just so huge, and you can apply it to so many different usage cases, right?
Debjani, before, please. And I'm saying we could, talk about these topics till the cows come home, but given the time constraints, I would want to talk about AI and gender diversity. I think that's a very, very critical part of it. Like just getting a woman on the podcast and a person like you itself has brought such a different perspective to the table. And I know because I've heard you earlier also. So
I haven't said a thing related to gender.
No, I know, but even no, I mean, see, the mere fact that you are heading NASSCOM in itself brings us such a different kind of perspective to the table. Of course, you were in Intel India. I remember interactions then also. But it's been an interesting space. But how do we get more women into leadership positions? How do we get women shaping the kind of AI narratives, the digital transformation narratives? Your thoughts on these?
How? I think the people at the top right now, when they're hiring, they need to stop looking for people who are exactly replicas of themselves. And that's the problem when you look at succession planning, not just in India, but everywhere. You want to hire someone
everywhere.
who is really
it's a global problem.
Because you believe you are so good. So only someone really like you will be able to carry the baton forward, right? But I mean that very seriously. I think there's a fundamental problem in how we look at succession planning, how we look at leadership pipelines. We mirror a lot of ourselves into it. And I'm guilty of doing that. So you will see me hiring a lot of women because, I sort of look for that. And I think all of us should stop doing that. I think we have to really make it about an equal opportunity pipeline. We have to make Indian workspaces and all. Frankly, India is doing better on gender, at least the tech industry, than any other country. And I'm very proud of it because we are 38% at mid-level and 50% plus at entry level, which is fantastic. But I think we have to make it about equal opportunities where anyone can, it's not just about gender, but however you're inclined, you can thrive if you have the capabilities. The moment we start putting the filters And the filters are usually unconscious biases that we start applying. We start leaving people out, because then, and I'm sure this happens to all of us, Leslie. If you are looking at your succession plan without really any malicious intent, but chances are you'll be thinking of someone who's very much like you. And the moment you think of someone very much like you, chances are it's going to turn out to be a man. Right. And I think these are some of the things we really have to think through and we have to break. I think we have a very good pool of women in STEM, and that continues to grow. We are really doing good as an industry at hiring, where half of the talent we hire are women. We are losing them. We have a leaky pipeline, so we are losing them along the way. And this is what we have to figure out. Why are we losing them along the way? It's usually because family compulsions, right? And that's where flexibility comes into play, because you can't say don't care about the family, because like it or not, women still are the primary caregivers in the family. And you can't change something like that, which is part of our culture. You can't. We have to accept our culture also. And if something happens, if my mom is ill, I will stay home. It doesn't matter if all my brothers are there, but I will be there. If something is serious, I will be there. And I'm proud of it. I don't apologize for that, right? That's who I am. And I think this is part of our culture. So this is where we have to give the flexibility first, to ensure that we don't lose women in those vulnerable moments when either they're getting married or they're having a kid or they're dealing with the family emergency. If we can keep men in the pipeline, even when they're dealing with family emergencies, why can't we keep women? A simple question, and I haven't got a good enough answer to that from any CEO, right? And succession planning has to be drastically we need a DPI approach to succession planning. We have to completely disrupt succession planning.
Rethink ecosystems.
Yeah, because
Rethink and
90%
rebuild
of current
ecosystem.
CEOs are men in India.
Yeah. No, but you're right. But India also, has double the global average when it comes to having women in the workforce, especially in the tech and in the white collar space.
Yeah, but not at the leadership positions.
Not at the leadership position. No. Yes. Like she says, leaky pipeline.
Is not the pipeline or the pool. Our problem is we have to build that equal opportunity culture, which takes into, the one thing which a lot of corporates, they make a mistake is they say, oh, we don't consider gender at all. That's wrong. We are differently built. I am different from you, right? And there are certain things that is different about us. You have to factor in those things. You have to factor in those gender-driven differences, right? And then you build for equal opportunity. You don't build for it by ignoring the problem or sweeping the problem under the carpet. You build for it by acknowledging, and I won't say problem, but acknowledging the differences, and then saying, this is how I build. But I think we are making progress every day. This is one area I don't worry too much about. I think we are making progress. And very soon, when people will realize that talent is directly related to profitability and competitive advantage, they are going to stop applying filters to talent. Everybody is going to want the best talent. So as long as we are skilling the women, I'm confident that we will have enough women in the industry.
It's not just gender. India has so much other diversity as well, right? In terms of socioeconomic and this era that we are just about to get into has the opportunity to include all such diverse workforce. I mean, 5 years ago, we did not think that Indians could create content. I mean, I remember speaking to Sharad Sharma, back then he was heading NASSCOM NPC, and he was saying, Jayanth, can you do a study, to see why Indians are not creators of content? We are consumers of digital content, but we don't create. But look at now today, I mean, TikTok took 6 months to go from 0 to 120 million active subscribers in India, and this is outside of the metros and tier 1 cities. And look at the number of people creating content on YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels. So I think, like you said, there's a lot of exactly. So I mean, AI can actually, bring in the India dream, like the American dream, right? I mean, everyone with the right ecosystem of learning and skilling in place, okay, all of a sudden, a lot of Indians from
we need
diverse
to
backgrounds.
we need to unleash the power of generation AI. That's India. Simple. We
I
need
like
to
that.
ensure
I like that.
everybody is skilled on how to use AI in a right way, responsible way, and then
Right,
unleash
right.
that power on the world. That's going to
We
be
need to
game
we need to
changing.
make a billion, 1.4 billion storytellers.
Absolutely.
But before we end this conversation, I would like to ask you about what's happening with the Indian IT services industry. For instance, a lot of, I mean, technically because of the way the Indian IT industries services industry worked, given the kind of insistence on the ADM, which I don't think has changed much as far as that is concerned. The consultancy part or moving up the value chain has always been an issue with at least the mid caps. With the large IT companies, we have seen a lot of movement, and which is why I think that NVIDIA deal with the Tata Group and tying in the TCS part of it made a lot of sense. What are you what more can the Indian IT services industry do to move up the value chain, given the kind of movement we have in AI, generative AI?
Tremendous disruption coming our way and good disruption coming our way. I mean, if you think about services, the building of end-to-end services, etc., I think every company is sitting on so much data. I mean, think of your company. How much data are you guys sitting on? And what mechanisms do you have today to really use that data? What if you guys could create your own LLM just for your company, your own LLM that would be able to use the data to give fabulous insights and fabulous whatever, inputs to people, right? Every company is going to want to create their own, whether it's called LLM or something, but they will want to create their own models. If hospitals, insurance, banks, it's already happening. Who are going to drive that? Who's going to drive that process? Who's going to create those? Who's going to manage? It's a huge opportunity for our services company. And it's a very natural progression. So, but that said, the traditional technology spending is not slowing down. Gartner has just upped its estimate, saying technology spend from 10.3 is going up to 10.6. So if the traditional spending is not going down, so I think there will be enough room for the business model to thrive, both the traditional business model as well as the disruptive business model that we are now beginning to see. And we are seeing all these companies call out their AI investments now. They're pretty serious about it.
Yeah, I mean, they're coming out in the open with a lot of adding, I was talking to even the mid-cap firms actually are doing a lot of stuff. I was pretty surprised.
In fact, the mid-cap firms actually, Leslie, are moving much faster, if I can say so.
Yeah.
Faster.
Yeah, that was very heartening actually. In fact, and they're doing real serious work in the field, both of AI and generative AI. I thought they were doing some pretty innovative work.
And they're building domain specific, the expertise. Rather than play across, they're picking domains and they're going deep into the domains, which is exactly the right thing to do.
They're optimizing their resources and faster decision making. These are the two things I keep observing.
Agree.
So before we conclude, Debjani, any final thoughts on what you would like to tell our listeners?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground, but the only thing I would like to say is there is so much of narrative on what AI can do to us, and the harms and the perils of AI, atom bomb, and all of that. But let's not forget that we are still in control. Despite all the advancements that we have seen, the humans are still in control of how we shape the roadmap. And I think this is where we have to stop worrying about what AI can do and start focusing and really investing on what AI should do. And how do we want to get the best out of AI, right? And I think we really need to put a lot of serious thought process and investment. I keep saying investment because that's so important, into figuring out how we unlock the power of AI to serve us for our own benefit, for our productivity, for our better health, for our better education.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point, because I think even when you have chats with Minister Chandrasekhar, this is exactly what he said. Let's talk about what AI is doing, the good part of it. It's not that we're turning a blind eye to what,
You set
the
up the
limitations.
You set up the oversights, and talking
Right.
regulation, Leslie will need another podcast, because that's the
Yes,
most
yes.
challenging thing
Yeah.
today.
No,
Totally.
that's why I did not get into it, because I know exactly,
Yeah.
and we really hope to get you back onto a podcast to talk about AI, and because
Yeah.
the Digital India Act really is, where we are going to see some part of it, but as you said, it's better to keep it out of the
Regulation and
conversation.
regulating AI is a
It's
totally complex
Is
animal.
a totally this one.
very
Yeah.
complex.
Data protection,
Yeah.
privacy, data fiduciary. Okay. All of those things are a
Absolutely.
completely different
Yeah.
animal. But we should have
It-
you again
that
over the
I'm
Yeah,
next
but
5
we
months.
will.
Yeah.
But
I,
funny thing that happened is US came out with this licensing approach to regulating
Right.
AI, right? And if you read the tweet, there's so many interesting tweets, responses saying that, okay, if you're going to license in US, I'll just go and build it somewhere else. I mean, AI does
Yeah,
not respect
exactly.
any national boundaries, and it's time we understood
Boundaries.
that, right? So
True.
we'll save that for another day.
Thank you very much for
Well,
your time. A pleasure having you on board, and we could see the
yeah.
passion that you bring to the table, and it's exciting. Thank you very
Lovely
much.
talking to you both too. Take care.
Thoroughly
Yeah.
enjoyed the conversation. Thank you,
Jayanth, I'll
Debjani.
see
Take
you
care.
next week.
Bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Next week,
Bye.
Leslie. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Take care. Bye.